Welcome to the Life of a Marketer podcast. Today's guest is Zack. Zack has an interesting niche that he works with in marketing. But Zack, I'm going to allow you to introduce yourself. Tell us about who you are and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Zach Whitley. I come from a long history of advertising, film, and kind of just that commercial industry. But I've always had this big passion for gaming. So in the last couple of years here, we've started a company called Rumble. Um, and we're really just trying to focus that long history of, kind of coming from Super Bowl commercials and Emmy Awards, and transitioning more to serving the gamer audience and serving non-endemic brands who want to get into it. So that's the sweet spot that we're aiming toward is instead of just purely non-endemic spots or purely gamer spots. We've done a lot of game trailers and pro player documentaries, things like that. We're trying to live in that sweet spot in between where we can really bring non-endemic brands uh, into the gamer space and speak authentically. So
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. We
yeah.
we haven't had any specialists in this niche, so it's great to have you on. It'd be interesting to learn a little bit more about the gaming industry. So what's the best thing about being in the marketing industry for you?
I think when I think about the marketing industry, the cool thing for me is I find that most people that I'm surrounded by are very driven. And whether that's because, they've got their own agency or they're entrepreneurs who have started a company that are trying to bring things to market, or they're just, people who work for these companies that are really passionate about their side hustle or their families. It's really cool to be surrounded by kind of goal setters and dream chasers. At least that's my experience. You don't have a lot of bump on a log type of people that there's a lot of people around us that can kind of be inspirations to continue pushing towards the things that we like to, chase after too.
If you're a bump on a log, you won't last very long in marketing.
Right, right, exactly.
That's very true. That's good. That's a good answer. I'd never thought in those terms. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So what sort of advice do you offer to those that are in the marketing industry right now?
I think first, and this is something that I kind of took on after our last big project is I think it's easy to have the tendency to crawl under your rock and live there when especially when you're working on big projects or just long-term clients that just have a lot of demands. Um, but it's been really important to me, especially these last couple months, to reach out to people around you, whether they're part of your industry or not. It's not necessarily a sales thing, but just get connected to community, both locally and within your kind of, your work niche. Um, because I think that, sometimes it serves a sales purpose, sometimes it can lead you to a client, sure, but um, it's been huge for me just to kind of have that local community. Like we work with mostly brands out of kind of the big three cities, New York, Chicago, LA. But I also live in a very small town with fiber in Michigan here, and so like I'm going out with entrepreneurs who are in the construction field, somebody who works at a kitchen down the street, just friends that I've met through, church or friends of friends and things like that. So I try to always keep my lines open. And LinkedIn, a lot of people complain about the sales bots all over the place, and it's true that is frustrating. But more often than not, I take those calls just to hear what they have to say because
Well,
it's always interesting. It's another human you can connect with. Um, so that's the first thing, kind of always keep that mindset of meeting people all the time, no matter who they are. And then two, to keep that long-term mindset, especially today. Um, in my niche of gaming and esports, there's been a huge spike, from 2020 to 2022, and now there's this huge correction going right back down. Um, but we have to look at that longer curve. Overall, we're still on this projection of growth in the 10 and 20-year view. In the 3-year view, everything looks terrifying, but in that wider scope of things, um, there's not a plateau here. There's not like this big canyon that we're falling into. It's still and I think that this applies to a lot of industries too. Of course, certain technologies and things like that come out that can shift the whole landscape, but for the most part, when we see headlines that are a little scary, like 2024, um, I think a lot of people get hurt when they jump off the roller coaster, but you'll be just fine if you hang on.
Awesome, awesome. So I gotta dive in. I want to ask you some tactical questions.
Yeah,
You've built a lot of commercials. It sounds like our agency, we do a lot of YouTube ads, and so we're building ourselves the actual ads out.
nice.
What has, and of course it's different because we're actually targeting people that are further. It's not branding; it's we're generating leads. But what has been for you? What's the key to really good video ads for you? What has worked well in the past for you, and what recommendations do you have for those who are running video type ads? What has worked for you?
It always, it varies from concept to concept. You can get into the weeds on, actual production, and, the way that things are made, from cameras to lighting to, this DP versus that DP. Um, but I think that really, what quality, effective advertising and content, YouTube content too, comes down to is just good writing, good creative. Um, I think that, you can have a good creative executed very cheaply and still have really excellent results. Or, um, inauthentic creative executed at the highest level. And it doesn't necessarily move the needle because it's really all about connection. And I think, I'm sure you know this, but um, most of advertising and probably marketing in general is about that connection and about, making that kind of that emotional appeal to the viewer.
Mhm.
And I think if your creative is not there from the get-go, you can you can only put lipstick on a pig for so long. So
Sure, sure. Yeah, we produce a lot of very cheap videos, stock footage. The key for our
yeah,
success has just been the actual ad script and the words that you say. And I mean, not that we make things that look bad, but it's definitely not pro level or anything like
sure,
that
sure,
like you guys make. And that's enough for our clients. It's like you say, is that are you forming an emotional connection? And uh,
right.
I remember once we did a branding campaign for a food brand that had they had this stock, beef stock. And
Mm,
we had this guy go, and it was in Spanish. We were trying to target a specific community, and he made chicken soup with it. Or it wasn't beef stock, it was chicken stock. He made chicken soup
yeah.
with it. And like hit his camera pointed the wrong way. It was really grainy and bad, the video, and it lasted 3 minutes long, the whole thing. We were going for branding, and we had, I don't know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of views, and it was like just people were watching the whole video all the way through.
No way.
It was like it cost them like $2,000 to do that. It was just insanity to get
I
people to watch
love it.
an entire 3 minute video about their product.
Yeah,
And it's because it was authentic, because it was just a guy, with this phone pointed, it was vertical, and it was supposed to be
yeah,
horizontal, and
yeah. Right.
let's just try it, and it worked.
I
And
love it.
that's the kind of thing that seems to work. The more
Mhm.
hyper produced it is, the less people are like, they're kind of they
Yeah.
don't find it believable.
Yeah, your advertising radar can go off pretty quick, especially depending on the platform. When you're on Instagram and you're just doom scrolling and an ad pops up, it's so immediate to spot it. You just immediately flick past it, even if it looks a lot like a lot of stuff around it. And I think that that comes a lot, uh, that ties back a lot to this authenticity message that in my niche is hyper important. Gamers, I shouldn't say gamers, but these audiences of esports enthusiasts or specific fans of specific games, you really have to know your audience, just like what you're talking about. You're marketing to a specific audience. You want to make it relatable to them, and also you want to have real value to it too. You can't just I could name a few brands that have done some exceptional examples of what not to do. Um, where you just take a commercial that's like a high production value that has kind of a nothing concept, but then you throw a couple video game characters into it, and all of a sudden they think it's applicable to every game on every in every word in every arena. um and it's really within the gamer sphere. Not only do you have to be super careful about making the correct references, uh you can be funny but not make fun. Um, there's a lot of things to kind of keep in mind, but then also within that, your fans of League of Legends are not the same people that are your fans of World of Warcraft. Your fans of Overwatch are not the same people that play Dungeons and Dragons necessarily. So you have to really get kind of specific from spot to spot and from concept to concept. And I think another important point too between companies is that you don't have to be attached uh to a certain production level unless it's dictated by the concept. And so we make just as many spots that are just vertical iPhone videos for somebody's YouTube content as we do big production value spots. Of course, we love making the big stuff because it's just like it's our passion to build stories in that way, but some of that stuff you don't need it and it really detracts from it. So yeah, just adding value to the viewer, giving them information they want to hear, telling them a story they want to hear. Um, I think that all goes a long way.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I think we learned a little bit today, so I'm glad. Switching gears a little bit, what other successful people in marketing like yourself would you like to acknowledge that should be on the podcast?
Good question. I have I have a mentor. He's actually a guy that I interned under when I was still in college, who has built a marketing company, just a small agency in Michigan, but like it's just excellent creative and more than anything, like tenacious. The name of the agency is Driven Creative Supply, and the guy I'm talking about is John Symbol. Um, and they have really like adapted to the market changing. They've really overcome some big hurdles and some crazy economic times, kind of just through like sheer white knuckle creative hard work. Um, and they're super well known for a lot of the things that they've made. Um, so I always, when I've got like a big decision to make, or I've got like a big kind of business problem or whatever, I still call John every time. I think he's just got this kind of like indomitable uh, uh, spirit about his creativity and what he sees in the brands that he represents. It's really cool.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Most likely we'll contact him. All
Yeah.
right. So for our final question, this is just for fun. Tell me the oldest technology that you remember using.
Let me think. So we had a rotary phone growing up. Um, that's probably, my dad, who ironically was like an absolute innovator with the OG like bag phone, you know what I'm talking about? Like the mobile
Uh-huh.
phone that
Uh-huh.
you'd like plug in your car and there's an antenna that magnets on top of the car. He got one of those like the day they came out.
Really?
But ironically, he refused to buy a new TV from like I mean, he got it long before I was born, probably mid 70s. He refused to get a new TV until like mid 90s. Like I think we got a new TV in like 96. And it had these like twist knobs that were like when you change the channel and oh, it's funny. Oh, and we had a very early model VCR too that had a remote, which was, pretty revolutionary, but the remote had a cord. So there's like a cord all the way across the room
Oh,
from the
wow.
VCR to the
I'd
to the
never seen that
recliner.
before ever, or even
Yeah.
heard of it. I had no idea that they had remotes with a cord.
Oh
Interesting.
yeah. Yeah, it was super cool.
Yeah, I imagine that did not last very long.
Yeah, right. My
Fast
yeah.
forward, someone trips over the cable. They're
Yeah,
walking.
right. We almost never used the remote, I think, probably for that reason. My dad was worried it was going to get dragged off the shelf or something.
Yeah. Yeah, and those old TVs from the 70s, I remember the dial like with the metal
Yeah.
Cheek, cheek, cheek.
Yep. Totally. That's
My
right.
parents had one in their house that was black and white, like an old one that someone gave them, and
Yeah.
I would play Atari on it.
Oh,
Like
nice.
someone gave us to. But
Yep.
anyways, all right, awesome, awesome. Hey, Zach, thank you so much for sharing today. We appreciate it. We're gonna end here. This is a short podcast, but everybody,
Yeah.
you can catch the Life of a Marketer podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11 something. If you would like to be added to your email list, it's jared@hiveleadmarketing.com. You can just email me directly. Hive Leads, my business, like a beehive, HIVELEAD, like a lead you get. HiveleadMarketing.com, Jared, JARED. And if not, we stream it all over social media, so Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, etc. And you can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which will also release it when we stream it. The Life of a Marketer podcast, it's called. So if you just Google that, or you just go to YouTube and Google that, you'll get it. Thanks so much once again, Zach. This has been awesome podcast.
Nice.